Hello and welcome to Senior Speak New Hampshire on your Concord TV, sponsored by AARP. I am Karen Almer-Dorsch, the producer host of this program, and I'm happy that you're with us today. My guest is a dear friend and also the New Hampshire AARP president for the volunteers. And I felt that it was very important for you to meet this wonderful gentleman who has a very colorful background and is absolutely loved by all of us. So, Pat McDermott, Pat McDermott.
He was a comedian.
Welcome. Well, pretty close. Welcome today, and give us a little bit about your background, if you will.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and happy. And we all love you too, Karen, so don't worry. I'm a New Hampshire native. I was born in Peterborough back in 1954, but who's counting? I lived there through high school. Then I went to college at Keene State College, just a half an hour away. And there I majored in mathematics. So I got my mathematics degree in 1976. I graduated from college in May, and in that, actually July 1st of that year, I moved to Manchester and started working for what was then Public Service of New Hampshire, which is now Eversource. So I worked there. That was my main career, for sure. I worked there for 37 years.
Wow.
And started in the regulatory, the rates area, for a few years because of my math background. Then I went into marketing and then got more externally focused positions in community development, economic development, community relations a little bit, and real estate. Did internal real estate for the company.
Okay.
I've been married I am married, I should say, for 42 years, be 43 in October.
Wow.
And I have two boys. Our oldest son, Andrew, who's a scientist for LabCorp, and works out of Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin. And our younger son, Daniel, who has autism and lives with us. He's 29.
Okay. And I understand you had a pretty illustrious career in Eversource. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was fortunate that I was able to get involved in a lot of external things representing the company, particularly in the economic and community development side of things. There are a lot of great projects all over the state. I was on the Economic Development Committee up in Coos County in Berlin, New Hampshire, for several years, helping those folks with a couple of projects. Power plant was the last one. They have a wood-fired power plant. You may have seen that in the news recently. But we helped with that. They have a state prison and a federal prison, and we were involved with that because of the infrastructure that's required. There's a fairly large hydro plant. When the company owned generation, Smith Hydro is the largest or second largest hydro plant in New Hampshire, at least in the public service of New Hampshire. So we worked with them in relicensing and getting all that. So I've been all over. I've been back to the Monadnock region working on some community things there, theaters and bike paths. And so I've had a lot of fun stuff working on not only grassroots and on the ground stuff, but also on some national energy policy. I was a member of a couple of national groups.
Right.
The Economic Utility Group, which is a national group. Actually, international is a couple people from Canada that are on that group. That I was on the board of that for a few years, and a couple other way back in the day when the Electric Council of New England was around and Electric Edison Institute. I was on several of those committees. So I got a good taste of national energy policy, which still can help us today with our AARP stuff.
Sure. And the wonderful thing is that you're so familiar with all parts of the state. That's a really positive thing for president of the volunteers.
Yeah, I think I think it is. I think it's definitely a positive thing. I enjoy it. I enjoy meeting people.
Yes, you
I
do.
enjoy talking to people and bringing the message. And AARP has such great messages that I'm really glad to do that. I know that's part of the strategy ongoing with AARP New Hampshire now is to branch out more.
Right.
In a couple of ways. One, get more into the local, but also expand that so
Exactly.
that we're working in more parts of the country, more parts of the state, and in bringing that message.
Yeah,
to
that's
our
really
folks.
true. That's one of the things that we really hope to do. So tell us a little bit about, you're also the president of the Executive Council of AARP Volunteers, right?
Right.
So tell us about their work.
Sure. The Executive Council is a small group. There's a minimum of 5. We have about 9 right now who sit on it. And it's made up of a diverse group, diverse interests, diverse backgrounds, as much as we can. Some geography. We have a gentleman from the North Country, now Whitefield, New Hampshire, that's on the Executive Council. And we really serve as the advisory council for the state director. We don't have any governance, we don't take votes, we don't make decisions, but we do give advice. And we also are, to some extent, the eyes and ears of the volunteers, because most of the people on the council are involved in other things, other phases of New Hampshire AARP work. And so they can bring that information to the council. Our last meeting, we had a pretty robust discussion about voter engagement and when we're going to start really getting involved in the presidential primary in a big way.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of planning, but we haven't really, as I said, fire the gun or whatever to start going at that full time. And there was a lot of back and forth about when are we going to do it, how we're going to do it. And so those are the kind of things. We've also been involved quite a bit in planning. There's an annual plan that the state puts together, and it's also a 3-year plan now. This is 24 to 2026. Is now we're putting that plan together for AARP. Each state has to have a 3-year plan as well as a 1-year plan.
So if we have a viewer in our audience who is interested in being on the Executive Council, can you tell us a little bit about what they might do?
Sure. It really is the Executive Council, how we get people to be on the council is basically it's a decision of the state director and myself. And again, we're looking for that diversity. We're looking for people that represent different areas maybe of the state or different areas of expertise. And so reach out to me, reach out to Christina Fitzpatrick, our state director. And we're always looking. And we have terms. And so the people are on their 2-year terms, and you can have a maximum of 3.
Right.
So people are rolling off from time to time. And we also, if we find a good person, we'll put them on.
And so if there is someone out there who is interested, you can contact our person in the office who is our main person, CEO I call her, Christina Fitzpatrick. And you can do that at aarpnewhampshire.org. Or, Pat, how do they get in contact with you?
My email is P, as in Patrick, McDermott, @aarp.org.
Okay. P as in Patrick, McDermott, capital M, small c, capital DERMOTT, at aarp.org.
Yep.
Okay. So moving on, you have recently assumed the president of the volunteers, right?
Yes.
But you've been on the board for a long while.
Yes. Yes.
So how has your job sort of changed?
It changed a lot more than I thought it was going to, Karen.
I thought it did.
But it's all good. I was on the executive council for 5 or 6 years. Back when they asked me to be on the council, they were looking for someone who had New Hampshire business experience. That was kind of a lack
Right.
on the council. And so I came in there and had the connections with the business community, and that's been very helpful. We had an excellent state president, Mark Boyd, who, again, there are terms, and he reached his term limit, and so he was rolling off. And the process for this is a lot different. You actually have to apply. There's an application process, and you apply, and then the applications are reviewed internally by a panel, I believe, and then finalists are chosen, and the finalists go through, it was just one round of interviews. So I had an interview with Christina, the state president from Vermont, I'll get the title wrong, but the regional volunteer director, and a person from the Washington office. And so I had an hour-long interview with those people, and then I was offered the opportunity to be state president, volunteer state president. Yeah.
Yes, and I have to tell you that the volunteers who know Pat had him as our #1 choice.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's been since January, and I think things are going okay. I
They
haven't heard
seem
too many,
to be very well.
too many complaints. But one of the things that the main duty that I've discovered as being volunteer state president is really representing AARP in various places, and various events, that sort of thing. And so I've been doing a lot of that. I've been going to an event, making remarks, thanking people. That's another big responsibility. We have about 150 volunteers. Many of them, like yourself, are extremely active. And so we need to thank those people. AARP would not function. We have 5 staff people. It would not function anywhere near to the capacity it does without the great volunteers that we have. So that's part of it. I also represent AARP on different boards and committees and that sort of thing. The Community Advisory Board, for example, for New Hampshire Public Television. I'm on that, representing AARP. It meets quarterly. It's, I believe, a federal requirement of public television stations throughout the country to have the board, and that's very interesting. And they're very interested in our work is basically to represent the communities and let New Hampshire Public Television know what are the issues, what are the hot issues in the communities, so that can then influence their programming. So it's a real direct, I think, benefit for us to be involved. I'm also involved with an energy from the New Hampshire Department of Energy, which is relatively new. It was kind of formed out of the Public Utilities Commission. They took a lot of the staff and put this Department of Energy together. And this committee focuses on energy efficiency and trying to promote energy efficiency and make sure that people are aware of the benefits of energy efficiency and using the programs that all the utilities have in other programs. There's federal programs and other programs. So those are just 2 examples of the things that I'm involved with, again, representing AARP.
So do you have an idea of how many hours per week this takes up your life?
No. And that's on purpose, because I try to do what needs to be done, and it's a balance. Obviously, part of my life, or the most important priority, is my family and our sons and my wife. So I have to balance that. I usually carve out, like, Tuesdays is AARP day, and I try to have meetings, and I go to the staff meeting, and I meet with individually with a couple of the staff people on Tuesdays, and we have our executive council meeting once a month, but that's on a Tuesday. So I kind of carve that out. But then I do other things. We have a local dinner over in Newfields Thursday night, which the Seacoast Planning Group has put
Oh,
together.
yes.
And it's at a farm, and it's
Oh, nice.
basically to support,
Right.
the local farmers, the local community.
Right.
And so I'm going over there to give some remarks,
great.
just in general about AARP. Part of it is education about AARP. The other part is
Yep.
to try to get maybe a volunteer or two to sign up
Right.
while we're there. So, yeah.
Well, I hope some of you people are listening, because I'm going to tell you, it's a wonderful, wonderful way to spend your life. After you have left the workforce, to volunteer for AARP. We have a lot of fun, and we're just a huge, wonderful family, right?
Absolutely. And I will say, Karen, that the more I do, the more rewarding it is.
Yeah.
And it's just everything that we do is so important. We're often, if not one of, we can be the only voice
Yes.
for certain
That's
groups, 50 plus. And if we weren't there, who knows?
Absolutely.
No one would be speaking up for these folks. And
that's right.
It's important.
And that leads me into talking a little bit about our role in the campaign. Okay, let's make people aware that we are nonpartisan. That's not our
Absolutely.
That's not our role. We are very, very much nonpartisan. But tell the group what we are most interested in.
Sure. We are definitely nonpartisan. We do not take positions on candidates, but we are issues focused.
Right.
And there's two main issues this year that we're looking at. Social Security, which is always an important issue for
Right.
AARP and will continue to be, and caregiving. Those are the top two. Prescription drugs prices and Medicare are the other two. But
Right.
the top two with Social Security and caregiving are the ones that we're going to be focusing
Indeed.
on. And what our plan is, and has not been launched yet, but we do plan to attend as many events, candidate events, as we possibly can, and talk to as many of these candidates, and hopefully get them on the record about these two main issues and what
Right.
their stances are, for informational purposes, so that our members, which we have 210,000 members in the state of New Hampshire.
Yes.
That's 210,000.
Yes.
I'm always impressed when I
I
say
know.
those numbers. So our members and others, 50 plus, will know where these politicians stand. And we like to make a presence, so we like to have several people at these events when we can. And it's also good in a lot of ways. It's good for camaraderie with our
Right.
with our volunteers, and they get to see some of the same people. We get to interact with the staff members, which sometimes can have a lot of influence in getting
Yes.
access to the candidates.
Yes. It's important for you to be aware, viewers, that when we are out talking to these candidates, that we have a set of questions that are asked to each and every one of our candidates. They are the same set of questions. We don't alter that. We want to know certain things, and we want to know their position on, as Pat said, Social Security, Medicare, drugs, or whatever. And that is important because it's not only us getting a statement from them, but it also allows our people who are in the audience to hear that point of view that they have, so that they are better informed when they go to the polls.
Exactly. And there's
Yeah.
often, if not always, media there, so that message gets out to even a broader
Exactly.
group.
Exactly.
Very
And
important.
frequently, candidates know when they see us that we're going to be asking certain questions, and they just address them early. Pat, you also have a good bit of experience in caregiving.
Yes.
So tell us some of that, if you will, please.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, we have an adult son who's 29 years old,
Right.
has autism. My wife and I are full-time caregivers for him. He lives with us. It's a wonderful blessing. It's taken us places we would never have
Right,
gone,
right.
and we're very happy to do it, and it's our choice. But you do have to make some sacrifices to do this, as all caregivers
Right.
do. It's estimated there's 168,000 caregivers in New Hampshire taking care of adults. These are not people taking care of children, but I mean, our child is an adult.
Right.
But adults, whether it's their parents or their spouses or their siblings or their adult children.
Right.
168,000. So there's a lot of people out there.
And they're saving our national government billions of dollars
Yes.
annually.
Yes, an incredible amount. And it's the home caregivers
Yeah.
that are the backbone of the caregiving system in the state of New Hampshire.
Right.
We would be lost without all the people
Exactly.
that are doing that. And it goes in stages. I mean, some people do a lot, some people do a little, but it's all important. The average cost or whatever, $7,200 out of pocket, just out of pocket for each caregiver annually.
Wow.
To take care of just paying bills or mileage or
Right.
or whatever. The estimates are that 934 hours a year are devoted to caregiving, again, on average per
Right.
person. And that translates into about $17,000 of unpaid labor per person every year, which is incredible. And that's at a rate of like $20 an hour. So
Right,
it's not
yeah.
an exorbitant amount.
Right.
And it doesn't count the emotional or physical toll.
Or the time that you need to spend to learn all about the ins and outs, legal, etc., that are there for you to have at your fingertips, if there's any help.
Right.
You know, that also.
Yeah, there's a lot involved in guardianship and power of attorney and all of that. There's a lot of things that you have to think about now and then in the future, and it is a responsibility. I've told my personal story before, but with our son, I ended up taking early retirement because it was
Wow.
just too much for my wife. So I retired a few years earlier than I probably would have.
Right.
But again, happy to do it.
Yeah.
And so.
I think most people are, but the important thing is we have people who are not only caring for someone like your son, but their parents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're in between, you know.
Yes.
That just has to be a tremendous, tremendous responsibility.
Yes, it is. And on top of that, a large percentage of caregivers are still in the workforce.
Exactly.
And that puts a real strain to balance that. People have to use their vacation time. People have to, so they don't get a break, they don't get respite, and it does become difficult. The first rule of caregiving, I always say, is take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're
indeed.
no good to whoever you're trying to help if you're not taking care of
No,
yourself.
that's so true.
But it's hard. It's hard to remember that.
Right, right. And as you say, it is a labor of love, but it's also a tremendous education to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you know, the wonderful thing is that people do it out of love, but you also can see, viewers, why that is one of AARP's number one priority when we talk to candidates. We want to know, what are you going to do to enhance the lives of these caregivers that are saving our nation so very much money?
Yes, absolutely.
You know, it's just so very important. Have I not asked something you would like me to ask?
Let me see. I have a couple of notes here.
Okay.
I did want to talk, well, a couple of things. One, on the caregiver part of things. It just happened this week in our family. Nothing to do with our son, but my wife's sister fell and broke her hip. Fortunately, everything's going to be fine, but she probably did this 20 years ago and put down her contact information and her emergency contact information, and it's my wife, who is her sister, which is fine, except my sister-in-law has 2 adult children, one who lives in New Hampshire, the other is in Virginia, but they're very capable young adults, and my niece was with her mother, but when a decision had to be made about taking my sister-in-law out of the hospital and putting it into the rehab, they called my wife. And my wife spent the day yesterday undoing all of that to get those decisions to her children, my sister-in-law's children.
Right.
So my point is here, Karen, keep your information up to date. Don't wait for a crisis.
Right.
Don't wait for a problem.
Oh, that's so important.
And, periodically check on that kind of thing. And,
Right.
And it could have been a lot more difficult or a lot bigger of a problem.
Right.
But my wife was able to contact our niece and get it squared away.
That's
Still took her all afternoon, but
sure. But it's done.
It's
but
done,
that's
and-
very good advice. Up to date records. I believe that our time is about over. But if you have one quick something.
All I want to say is AARP, very rewarding, very important. Anybody would be, it would be great for anybody to volunteer, to participate. Give it a try. You don't have to jump in. You don't have to volunteer hours and hours and hours. You can give it a try, see what you like, and do as much or as little as you like. And thank you so much, Karen.
Oh, listen, it's been a pleasure. And I would say to you, too, there is a job for you in AARP. Whatever your talents are, we have a position for you. So until the next time, and thank you for joining us. And Pat, thank you so
you're
much
welcome.
for being here. And until the next time, be good, do good, be one.